Hey guys, welcome back to this tutorial on RGB LEDs lookup table. Now let's assume that the user enter a color that doesn't exist in this database. How are you going to handle it? Now let's take a quick example. The user enter color pink and then he press enter, then boom, nothing is happening, right? So there is a problem. So your code need to be able to tell the user, well, that color is not available on our database. So the implementation here is very simple. You're just going to add an else if statement, right? Else if the value of index, because remember, the only time we are executing this if statement is when the index is not equal to -1, as we are already declaring it there. Now, in a situation where this if statement does not validate, right? Basically, there is no match. Okay, so that means you're not going to execute this line of code where you're going to assign the index a new value. So that basically means your index here will return the value of -1. So this means your else if here should then be if index is equal to -1, as you set it up right up there, then you should be able to print something. Okay, so what are you going to print? Now let's go ahead and just copy this line of code here. Okay, that makes things much easier for us. Then we're going to say the color that the user enter does not exist in the database. So I'm going to remove this and say does not exist in the database, right? Then we just have to remove the RGB parameter here, as we only going to assign the color here, right? So this is all we need to tell the user that the color is not available on the database. So let's go ahead and give this a try again. So we're gonna go pink, enter, whoops, nothing is happening. So what's the problem here? So it seems to me that we are actually, we're not executing here, which is a problem. Because if there is no match, right? If there is no match, that basically we don't get into here. That means we don't get here, right? That means this is not true. So we don't assign the values. So we should get to the else here. So that basically means something is up somewhere here. We need to find a way to debug. To find a situation where we can debug this now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use Visual Studio capabilities to basically try to debug what is happening here in this section here that is causing us not to execute this line here when the color is clearly not available in the database here. So I have created the Visual Studio C++ console application. So I'm going to go ahead back into my VS Code and just copy all of this, right? So we're going to copy and we're going to replace everything here. Now this is a C++ compiler, but you can run your C code in it, although there will be some issues. Now before we can continue, please guys, if you found this tutorial useful, don't forget to subscribe to CMTEQ channel and give this tutorial a thumbs up. That will be highly appreciated. Right, the first one we're getting here, there is a value of type const car. Okay, so that basically means we need to change here to a const car instead, and the problem goes away. Now we can go ahead and run this or build the solution. So let's just build this solution quickly and see what we get here. Okay, our solution failed. The first one is scanf is out of service. So we need to add the _s to make it safe here. Okay, so I'm gonna add _s, and also this string to upper is also kind of deprecated, so we cannot use it. Now I'm going to just remove it, right? So we're going to just use it without converting it to upper. Now let's go ahead and build this solution again and see where we got. Still failing. Now the issue here is not enough argument passed, so it's appeared that this scanf, the safe one, you need to add another argument. So we're gonna pass the size of the character or the color name. So I'm gonna go size of, like that. Then I'm going to pass color name, something like that. Then we need to dereference here, and we can go ahead and rebuild this again. There we go, then it's passed. Okay, now let's go ahead and give this a test, and I'm going to execute a color that does not exist. Then we're gonna get the same result as we're getting in VS Code, right? It's return without executing this line of code here. So now we're gonna debug. I'm going to put a breakpoint here and debug. So start debugging. Now when we start debugging, it's going to load all the debugging profile here. Now the debugger is running. Now we can go ahead and pass the name pink that we know is not on our database. Then the code stop where we actually want to be. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the step into. Now as soon as I step into, there is an exception here. Now what is the exception that's been thrown here? Now remember, we are not handling exceptions here. Okay, so the code is going to crash. So we see access violation. And if we come to the variable color name here, we can see that error reading characters of string. So there is a problem here in the way we've done things here. So now since we are dereferencing color name here and we're passing the size, now this is basically what we call, this is an array of character. Remember, when you enter, for instance, pink, there is like 1, 2, 3, 4 characters in pink. Okay, so which means we need to pass the size here so that it can actually work. So we're going to stop this code. Okay, then we pass the size of this character array. Then we're going to remove the pointer sign. Then automatically you can see that the error is indeed gone. So now let's go ahead and run this again one more time in debug mode. We're leaving our breakpoint right there. So we enter again pink with our 4 characters, and then we go enter. Okay, so now this time around, if we come here, you can see that we are reading pink. Okay, we're reading pink. There is no more error. Okay, there is no more access violation. Now let's step into this line of code. Now we step into, as you can see that this here is false, right? This is false. Okay, so because it's false, we automatically came out. Now remember, the first color here is black, so we're going to circle through all of them all the way down to the color white. Let's continue to circle through. Okay, we're going to go through all of them. Okay, so let's continue to circle through. Now which one are we checking now? Let's expand this. So we're going to expand this here so we can see what is the name. Okay, magenta. Right now we are basically comparing magenta with pink. Okay, so if we expand again magenta here, okay, so we got about 2 more colors to go through. Now if we check again here, we are now doing white, which is basically the last color here is white. Now after white, you can see that the rest of the color here, it's blank, so which means it's null. Okay, so it's a null variable right there. So now when we try to make a comparison, null, you can see that color lookup null, and here pink. Now how are we going to compare null and pink? There we go. Let's go. Then boom, we got an exception. There is an exception that's been thrown here again, because what? We are trying to compare a null variable with a variable of type string of characters, which is a violation. Now this is why as soon as we hit this roadblock here, our code basically breaks. Okay, the code breaks. That is why we don't even get to here or here. Okay, so that's the issue here. The code is breaking. So now in VS Code, here, we're not getting the exception being thrown at us, and the code is just basically returning with nothing. Okay, so at least now we know what is the problem. So what is the solution here? Now the solution here is going to be to basically to find a way where we can handle that exception without our code actually stopping, right? So that we can basically break out of this process. So what I'm going to do here is, so we're not going anywhere right now. We can continue circle. The exception is not going to go anywhere. So what I'm going to do, just inside this for loop here, okay, inside this for loop, I'm going to add a line of code here. The line of code I'm going to say, if this color lookup is now null, right? If the value is now null, we basically must break before we can get here. Okay, before we can get here, we want to be able to get out of that situation. So I'm going to say if color lookup, then I pass the variable I for the index that we're going through. If that is equal to a null variable, okay, then what I want to do is basically to get out of there. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to get out of there. And to get out of there, I'm just going to pass a break here. Basically just to break. The same thing I'm doing here. Okay, as soon as I get my index, I break out of there so I can get in here. So I'm going to also break out of there. Now let's go ahead and test this again. I'm going to remove the breakpoint. Okay, I'm going to remove the breakpoint and we're going to run this again. And let's go. Pink. There you see, the color pink does not exist in the database. So now we are able to execute this line of code because the code is no longer crashing there. So now we've got our solution. So what we're going to do now is to basically go back into our Visual Studio Code to just copy this, right? So we're just going to copy this code here. That is basically the only fix. Everything else, we're going to leave it as is because we know it's working in VS Code. So we open our VS Code in our for loop here. This is where we're adding this line of code. So let's go ahead and test this now. This time around, we've got a solution now. So I'm going to enter pink. There we go. The color pink does not exist in the database. You can enter red. Now remember, red exists. You get your RGB for red. And if you enter a color, let's say test, we know test is not a color, where color test does not exist. So that is it, guys. That is how you debug your code and you fix your problems. Thank you for watching. If you find it useful, don't forget to subscribe to CMTEQ channel and give this tutorial a thumbs up. Until next time, cheers.